Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central Television. I am Judith Atibi, and here are the stories making headlines just beyond the continent. And we'll begin from the United States of America, where President Trump has responded to China's call for respect in the ongoing trade war between the two countries. In a statement read out by the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, President Donald Trump said it's up to China, not the United States, to come to the negotiating table on trade. He said the ball is in China's court, arguing that China needs to make a deal with the U.S. Trump emphasized that the U.S. does not have to make a deal with China, as there's no difference between China and other countries, except they're much larger.
Made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country, except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way,
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump announced that Chinese-made smartphones and other electronics will no longer be exempt from tariffs, reversing an earlier decision. The move follows a fresh warning from the White House that China could be placed into a different bucket, or rather a different tariff bucket, signaling a possible escalation in the ongoing trade dispute. In response, China has argued that the U.S. president the U.S. president has been urged to completely scrap the tariff regime and return to a path of mutual respect and cooperation. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he stated that the new levies would be in addition to a range of global tariffs introduced earlier this month, which has been temporarily suspended for 90 days. Earlier, our international correspondent Afua Hagan shared some insights on the ongoing trade war between the United States of America and China. Here's what she said.
Trump likes to change his mind, so that number could change at any moment. But Trump still has plans for tariffs on pharmaceutical drugs, on lumber, copper, and computer chips. And he said that these are going to happen in the not too distant future. So when it comes to pharmaceuticals, to medication, he said that the US are doing it because they want to make their own drugs. Now, more than 70% of the materials that are used in medication are made in the US, that are used in medication that's made in the US is actually produced abroad. That's the ingredients. And they're produced in India, in China, and the EU. America produces about 20% of all pharmaceuticals made worldwide, but consumes 45%, which is much more than any other country.
Meanwhile, Mexico has denied that its farmers were dumping tomatoes in the United States and said it would seek talks to avoid duties announced by Washington. The U.S. Department of Commerce said on Monday that it would terminate a 2019 agreement that had failed to protect U.S. tomato growers from unfairly priced imports from Mexico. During President Sheinbaum's regular morning news conference, Agriculture Minister Julio Bardigo said that they are seeking dialogue. Washington said that it would impose an anti-dumping duty order on July 14th, resulting in duties of 20.9% on most tomato imports from Mexico.
Entonces no hay ningún dumping que haga el jitomate o los productores de jitomate mexicano para exportar el jitomate. Pero en el caso incluso de que llegara a aplicarse esta sanción, de todas maneras el jitomate mexicano seguiría exportándose a Estados Unidos porque no tiene sustituto. El principal problema que habría es que serían más caros los jitomates en Estados Unidos.
Ya lo hicieron en el 2019, igualito que ahorita, muy parecido. Y ahí se negoció. Se platicó, se negoció, México se defendió, dio sus argumentos y se llegó al acuerdo que estaba vigente hasta ahorita.
And now to the Middle East, where Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has expressed satisfaction with recent talks with the United States. Khamenei, while speaking on the ongoing negotiations, expressed doubt on the intentions of the United States. In his words, I'm going to quote him here, he says, and quote, "The talks were well carried out. Entering negotiations with the U.S. is a decision, but we are very pessimistic about the other side," end quote. Kimani, however, expressed confidence in the Islamic Republic's capabilities to defend itself and its position amid threats from the United States.
خطوط قرمز مشخصه، برای طرف مقابل هم مشخصه، برای ما مشخصه و دنبال بشه مذاکرات به شکل خوب. ممکنه به نتیجه برسه، ممکنه نرسه. به طرف مقابل البته خیلی بدبین، طرف مقابل رو قبول نداریم، میشناسیم طرف مقابل، اما به توانایی خودمون خوشبین هستیم، میدونیم که ما خیلی کارا میتونیم انجام بدیم.
Palestinians in Gaza are fleeing their homes following a warning from the Israeli army ahead of a airstrike on west of Al-Ziwayad municipality in the central Gaza Strip. Israel's warning came as it offered a ceasefire proposal if Hamas releases half of the remaining hostages held in Gaza. A senior Hamas official acknowledged receipt of the truce proposal and assured that Hamas will respond to it within 48 hours. The proposal offers a truce of at least 45 days in return for the release of 10 living hostages held in Gaza. It also provides for the release of 1,231 Palestinian prisoners and from Israeli jails and the entry of humanitarian aid into the territory, which has been under complete blockade since March 2nd. The proposal calls for a permanent end to the war on the condition that Palestinian factions in Gaza, including Hamas, disarms. Hamas has rejected the disarmament, demanding a red line, saying that it's a red line and non-negotiable. Our correspondent Ayo Lugwesing took a closer look on the ceasefire proposal in this report. Take a look.
Hamas official confirmed that Israel has offered a 45-day truce if Hamas agrees to release half of the remaining hostages. Of the 251 people abducted during the October 7 attacks, around 58 are still believed to be in Gaza, 34 of them presumed dead. Egyptian mediators passed on the Israeli proposal, which reportedly includes aid deliveries and possible extensions of the ceasefire. But Hamas says Israel also demanded full disarmament, a red line according to the group, which insists resistance weapons are non-negotiable. Meanwhile, the United Nations describes the situation in Gaza as catastrophic. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says no aid has entered since March the 2nd. Supplies of fuel, water, and medicine are nearly exhausted, and aid workers are now rationing remaining stockpiles. Doctors at Nessa Hospital in Han Yunis say they are overwhelmed. French President Emmanuel Macron and Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas called for an urgent ceasefire and the immediate delivery of humanitarian aid. Macron has signaled France could soon recognize a Palestinian state, a move sharply criticized by Israel. Hamas officials say they are open to a full hostage exchange if Israel agrees to a permanent ceasefire and withdrawal. But senior leaders accuse Israel of backing away from earlier commitments. The initial ceasefire, which began in January, broke down in March. Under new proposals, Hamas would release 10 living hostages in exchange for U.S. guarantees that a second phase of the deal will be negotiated. As diplomatic pressure builds and civilians continue to suffer, the path to peace remains fraught with uncertainty. But with lives on the line, mediators are working urgently to broker a breakthrough. For News Central, I'm Ayo Olubusi.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday visited northern Gaza, vowing to intensify military operations against Hamas until all war objectives are achieved. Accompanied by Defense Minister Israel Katz and Military Chief Eyal Zamir, Netanyahu received a security briefing from commanders at the site. The visit came as Gaza-based health authorities reported that the death toll from the 18-month Israeli offensive had surpassed 51,000. Netanyahu praised Israeli troops for what he called a remarkable job in the Gaza Strip and said Hamas would continue to absorb more and more blows. Defense Minister Katz echoed the remarks, saying the military would escalate its pressure on Hamas until the group agrees to release the hostages and is ultimately defeated.
אני פה עם שר הביטחון, עם מפקדי צה"ל והלוחמים שלנו, הסדיר והמילואימניקים המופלאים. הם עושים פה עבודה נהדרת ברצועת עזה, הם מכים באויב, והחמאס יספוג עוד ועוד מכות. אנחנו עומדים על כך שהוא ישחרר את חטופינו, ואנחנו עומדים על השגת כל יעדי המלחמה שלנו.
Staying with the war in Gaza, the Maldives has imposed an immediate ban on Israeli passport holders, citing its unwavering support for Palestinians amid the ongoing conflict in Gaza. President Mohamed Muiz approved the decision shortly after it was passed by Parliament, with officials framing it as a direct response to alleged atrocities in the Palestinian territories. While largely symbolic, given that only 59 Israeli tourists visited the Maldives in February, the move reflects mounting political pressure on the Muiz administration to take a stand. The Maldives, a predominantly Muslim island nation, had previously lifted a similar ban in the 1990s and cautiously explored the possibility of restoring ties with Israel in 2010. Israel, for its part, has already warned its citizens against traveling to the Maldives. Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, we turn to Ukraine. Is there going to be a ceasefire? After the break. And you're welcome back. NATO Chief Mark Rutte has acknowledged the difficulties in the push for a ceasefire and lasting peace in Ukraine. Rutte made the remark at a U.S.-led talks during a surprise visit to the port city of Odessa, where he met with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. Rutte condemned recent Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians while insisting that the U.S. President Donald Trump's push for a truce is not easy. Now, his comments contrast with an assessment from Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who said he sees a peace deal emerging after talks with Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Russia. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calls for the fast and effective preparation of a foreign troop contingent to deter future Russian aggression in the event of a peace deal.
Discussions are not easy, not least in the wake of this horrific violence. But we all support President Trump's push for peace. Other allies, including through efforts led by France and the United Kingdom, are ready, willing and able to shoulder more responsibility in helping to secure peace when the time comes.
Британія, Франція, інші країни НАТО вже активно готують основу для безпекового контингенту в Україні. Важливо, щоб ми всі були достатньо швидкими, результативними в цьому процесі. І також має запрацювати максимально ефективна місія НАТО з надання безпекової допомоги та тренувань для України у Вісбадені. І її ефективність – це для нас дуже важливо, і це захист для наших.
Meanwhile, Russia on Tuesday sentenced 4 journalists it said were associated with late opposition leader Alexei Navalny to 5.5 years in a penal colony, intensifying a crackdown on press freedom and Kremlin critics. Navalny, Putin's main opponent, was declared an extremist by Russian authorities, a ruling that remains in force despite his death in an Arctic penal colony on Friday, 2024. Moscow also banned Navalny's organization as extremist shortly before launching its 2022 Ukraine offensive and has ruthlessly targeted those it's deemed to have links to him. A judge sentenced the reporters who all covered Navalny to 5 years and 6 months in a general regime penal colony. They were found guilty of participating in an extremist group after being arrested last year. And in a related development, China has firmly rejected claims of its involvement in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine following recent accusations from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. President Zelensky claims Moscow is dragging Beijing into its invasion. Ukraine also paraded 2 Chinese soldiers reportedly captured while fighting for Russia. In response to this, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ling Jian, he described these allegations as political manipulation and hype, and also emphasized that Beijing has advised its citizens to avoid conflict zones and not participate in foreign military operations.
武装冲突的区域，避免以任何形式卷入冲突，尤其应避免参加任何一方的军事行动。在乌克兰危机问题上，中方的立场是一贯的、明确的。我们始终致力于劝和促谈，推动止战停火。我们要求有关方面正确认识中方客观公正立场，不要搞政治操弄。
Accusations of fraud in Ecuador's Sunday presidential elections, countering leftist candidate Luis Gonzalez's request for a recount. Electoral bodies, including the Organization of American States and the United States, alongside members from Gonzalez's party, asserted that President Daniel Noboa had legitimately secured a full term. Noboa's victory, marked by over 1 million votes, was unexpectedly decisive following a close February first round, where he led by just 16,700 votes. 2 years into a brutal civil war, Sudan remains locked in one of the world's most devastating humanitarian crises. On Tuesday, international leaders gathered in London for a major summit aimed at charting a path to peace, though critically without the warring parties themselves. For News Central, international correspondent Afua Hagan has more.
Across the globe convened in London, marking the 2nd anniversary of Sudan's war, a conflict the United Nations has called the world's worst displacement and hunger crisis. Despite the urgency, neither Sudan's government nor the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the main factions in the civil war, were present. The war, which began in April 2023, has displaced over 13 million people and claimed tens of thousands of lives. Both sides, led by rival generals Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, stand accused of atrocities. UNICEF says nearly 2,800 children have been killed or maimed since the fighting began. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy pledged £120 million in new aid, vowing the UK will not let Sudan be forgotten. He was joined by representatives from Germany, France, the EU and the African Union, all calling for an urgent ceasefire and greater protection for civilians.
And today I'm announcing a further £120 million worth of support. But the biggest obstacle is not a lack of funding or texts at the United Nations. It's a lack of political will. With over 4 million refugees having fled the country and instability spreading far beyond Sudan's borders, it's also strategically wrong to forget Sudan.
Germany committed €125 million in aid, while France announced a €50 million contribution. The head of the Red Cross described civilians as trapped in a relentless nightmare. But despite global concern, Sudan's foreign minister protested the conference, claiming his country was excluded from talks. The fight has essentially split Sudan in two, with the RSF controlling large swathes of Darfur in the south, with the army dominating the north and east. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of growing regional instability, urging countries to stop the flow of weapons into Sudan. As world powers call for peace, Sudan remains mired in conflict and its people caught in the crossfire. Whether this summit brings real change or simply more promises remains to be seen. For News Central, I'm Afua Hagan.
And off to France, where the country's defense minister, Sébastien Lecornu, was in Greece on Monday, where both countries signed a new defense agreement for the supply of 16 exquisite anti-ship missiles. The deal not only boosts Greece's naval capabilities, but also reinforces bilateral ties amid ongoing regional security tensions. Now, during his visit, Lutnick reaffirmed France's commitment to a more autonomous European defense posture. He emphasized the importance of the European Union charting its own strategic course while still respecting the sovereignty of individual member states. Lutnick also underlined the need to pursue this vision both within EU institutions and through direct bilateral collaboration. And that's all from Beyond the Continent. Now, do remember that you can send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV on all social media platforms. You can always watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422 or on GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274. Find us on Avo TV or stream us live on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith at TV. Good night.